Welcome to another episode of Keeping It Realty with Marc and Brian. So it's been very exciting and a lot of fun to really put these shows together. We're getting a lot of really good feedback on Facebook, on Instagram, on
LinkedIn.
Twitter.
Yeah. Thanks for all the feedback that you guys have been giving us, and so we encourage you to give us more. Ask us questions. Put us on the spot. That's cool.
And again, another shout out to our show sponsor, East Brother Beer Company. Huge fans, and today we are going to be trying a Bo Pils.
Oh, I've never tried this one before. What is a Bo Pils?
To be honest, I don't know.
You're supposed to be the beer connoisseur. I'm the one that just drinks
Pilsner.
it.
Pilsner, it's a Bohemian style golden with lemony.
So it's a hippie Pilsner.
Yeah, it's a hippie one. But
It's nice and light.
it's really good. Yeah.
Very
I
light.
Love their beer. I love their
Very
beer.
light, very good.
Their beer is the best.
Slight taste of fruitiness with a hint of olive. No, I'm just totally making that up.
That's very snobby at that point.
Yes. We just need all we need now is the cheese.
You know, we should bring on the East Brother Beer Company, come here and talk a little bit about real estate.
We should. I mean, I've actually had a couple of different discussions with them and my other partner and board game nights and other collaborations.
Yeah, it'd be fun to get them here. So we're going to jump right into our very first topic, and it's broker price fixing. So recently, a big lawsuit has been filed in the world of real estate that has a lot of people very concerned, because depending on how this lawsuit goes, if the plaintiffs win in this case, it could change the entire real estate industry. And to give a little bit of background, the people that are suing the top brokers. You have Keller Williams, who are the...
Well, Alon Pinnell was named in
Was Alon Pinnell
I believe
on there?
so. Yeah,
Yeah, so
Remax, Keller Williams,
Okay, so they sued
Berkshire Hathaway,
like four...
Realty.
Yeah, in Realty, yeah. So they're suing four big brokerage companies, and basically what they're claiming is that because these brokers are so big and many of their agents are part of the National Association of Realtors, they use the MLS rules that the National Association of Realtors passes down to all realtor associations in order to influence how broker-buyer compensation is handled through buyer-broker agreements in order to inflate actual overall commission prices. So it's very interesting how they're approaching this, and it has a lot of people very concerned. I mean, what do you think about this, Brian?
Well, as I was kind of going through the complaint and some of the bullet points, I found a couple of things that I thought were not quite correct. I mean, again, to put things in context, when you, as a seller, decide to sell your home, you sign a listing agreement. And the original law that prohibited price fixing is that, otherwise known as collusion, is if several brokers within a community got together and I said, hey, Mark, let's not drop our commissions less than the typical 6%, or let's not increase our commissions above the typical 6%, right? Therefore, creating some type of a collusion and not creating a fair market. These were the ideas about price fixing. These particular items that they bring out about price fixing pertain to things like prohibiting buyers and sellers from negotiating a broker commission. Now, just taking that one example here, for instance, I've signed listing agreements, and some of them have varied from 4.5% to 5%, sometimes 6%. Of course, I'm always going to try to negotiate the highest commission. At the same time, looking out for the seller based on what they're going to net. But in all of these instances, the commission is always negotiable. The listing agreement in the past was designed so that a broker could sue and have a legal document in the event that the seller attempted to defraud the broker by not paying them a commission, or there's a lot of other different possible things that a seller could do. However, none of these particular items really, again, without looking at what the actual practices of Keller Williams are or the large companies that have been included in this, all of these different things are very negotiable, even if you do sign a listing agreement. There have been times where I've actually opted to reduce my commission, even though I have a signed listing agreement. so long as I agree to it, and so long as the seller agrees to it. And
now,
then
that's just one aspect of the lawsuit.
Correct.
The other aspect is the MLS. What a lot of people don't understand is that many realtor associations actually own the local MLS. Brian.
This is being a bad. I'm not going to use that now.
You know what? You know the beauty of pre-recorded is we can just skip right ahead to it.
That's good.
And skip this part.
That's good. This will be edited later.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know that many realtor associations own or have some kind of vested interest in their actual MLS that they provide to their realtor association. Now, the problem with this lawsuit is that it claims that there's violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act. And so if the judge eventually rules in favor of the plaintiff, you may see a lot of realtor associations have to separate themselves from actual MLS ownership. If that happens, it's going to be very interesting to see what really happens to these realtor organizations, because many of them really depend on the income that comes in from these MLSs. And if that income disappears, now you're going to have some associations, and I think a lot of the smaller associations that will struggle in order to survive. So it could change the entire landscape of the realtor associations membership, and it's from a realtor association perspective, I think it's pretty scary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to wrap things up, kind of stay tuned as the lawsuit unveils, because there's a lot of different points here that really need to be vetted out to determine where this all lands.
So our next subject that we're going to talk about is budget reforms from the CFPB, the FSOC, and the OFR. So,
by the way, we're going to test you on that later. It's going to be a 10 question exam.
So recently, there's Trump released his budget, and this is for the 2020 budget. And part of this makes a lot of modifications to how certain programs work. He's still trying to attack the Dodd Frank Act that came out in 2009, I believe. And the Dodd Frank Act, there were some pluses to it, a lot of minuses to it. It was like a 2,500 page document with so many regulations that to this day, maybe 50% of those regulations were actually put into place.
And to put things in context with that, those regulations were designed so that a lot of the abuses that took place with loans pre-2007, which led to the crash, don't get repeated. But it took it a little too far to the extreme.
Yeah, and so now there's a lot of reasons in order to pull back on some of that regulation, especially for us going back into a 2020 recession. You kind of want to release some of those regulations. Now, the Trump administration wants to completely just get rid of Dodd Frank Act. However, they are having problems with doing that. There's not a lot of support for entirely just throwing it away. So with his budget, he has different modifications that would essentially make it tougher for these departments to get funding. And the whole purpose of the budget is to put them into appropriations committee through the Congress. So what would essentially happen is if these committees, these departments would need any additional funding above and beyond what they already have, then they would have to go through Congress to get budget or to get funding. Now, the flip side on that too is if Congress doesn't feel as if they're very valuable, they can even cut their funding dramatically and entirely wipe them out simply on cutting funding. So I think that's really where what they're trying to do with these. The biggest one is the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They were notorious here in California for the change for the Department of Real Estate. Historically, California real estate's been regulated by the Department of Real Estate. Then after the CFPB took over, they changed it to the Bureau of Real Estate.
Yeah, in essence, they became from the DRE, they became the BRE. They went from a department to a bureau. They had a little bit less power and it was supposedly less expensive for them to run, in short. And then it lasted all but like 3 or 4 years, and now they're switching it back to the Department of Real Estate.
Well, now it's already switched back to the Department of Real Estate.
Yeah,
but,
it actually has.
But there were a lot of issues, a lot of complaints with people who were doing day-to-day business with the BRE that the bureaucratic system just wasn't working. So that was a really big change. Now, one of the other items in the Trump budget are FHA fees. FHA fees that they want to change. And this has been an ongoing battle the last few years, because after the 2008 financial crash, you had, so I should clarify that FHA, whenever they guarantee and insure a loan, they're required to hold a certain amount, a percentage amount for reserves in case that loan defaults. And that historically has always been 2%. Well, when the financial crash happened, they were at like 0.25%,
right?
Less than half a percent.
And again, to put things in context, FHA allows you to put 3.5% down, obviously less than 20% down. Anytime you put less than 20% down, you're going to have an insurance premium or mortgage insurance, not to insure you, but to insure the bank that made the loan. And then since these regulations came into place, that mortgage insurance premium has essentially doubled from a 0.0035 to a 0.085. And in the past, you were able to get rid of that insurance premium, that mortgage insurance, if your property increased in value by 20% and you can justify it through comparables. Whereas now you cannot get rid of it. It's part of the loan. It's a higher premium. It's double the cost of what it used to be. And the only way to get rid of it is to refinance out of your FHA loan.
Now, what's happened is that with these higher fees, FHA has actually bumped up the number of or the amount of reserves they have. And I want to say they're around 3%. Now, with that, people are telling them, hey, you need to lower your requirements for reserve back down, pass those savings on to homeowners so that they can then be able to afford FHA financing much more easily. The problem is the FHA director did not want to do that because he sees a 2020 recession coming. He says this would be a bad move. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. And it's created a big battle, which now we see in the 2020 Trump budget, why he wants to change that.
Well, that's what he says his reason is for. We all know that once they've raised the fees on us and we've gotten accustomed to them, just like our water bill or garbage bill, they don't ever raise them. They don't ever bring them back down, even though we're out of the crisis.
Okay, our third topic is drone inspections. Is it the next big thing? Now, recently there was an article about the Salesforce Tower where they're doing various inspections using drones. Brian, I'm going to let you jump in here and talk about, are drones the future for inspectors?
I personally think it's the future, period, for a number of different things, from inspectors to just the way that we send out we look at different properties, obviously drones have begun to proliferate everywhere, from military technology to now commercial uses. There's going to be different aspects of a property's exterior that you could always access that you wouldn't normally be able to access. It'll probably bring the cost of inspections down, because then the time that's spent. But again, I kind of regress when I say that, because the cost of drones is also rather up there. And then, of course, as we begin to use them more, traditionally the cost of using these new technologies should go down. The types of things that we could do with drones, if you've ever watched a TED Talk, are almost limitless, and these applications are everywhere. So yes, in short, I think it's the future.
Yeah, for me, I think if you look at what a home inspector does, a roof inspector, really the roof inspectors, consider this. Consider the fact that they can stand on the ground, use a drone to inspect the gutters, inspect the roof, inspect everywhere around the property without using a ladder. You're going to lower insurance premiums.
Well, the very example that we cited here was a high rise where they don't have to send people into very, very risky environments dangling from cables of rooftops on a high rise.
Now, what would also be very neat to see are the drones that are very tiny with very high quality cameras that could sneak into sub areas, like the crawl space areas, or very tiny little corners, or alleyways, or whatever. In San Francisco, you see a lot of buildings that have that are separated by maybe 6 inches. Well, how do you inspect that? Well, with a very tiny drone, it might be possible.
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, I think with something like that, it'll probably be more of a drone on wheels as opposed to a flying drone. But yeah, I mean, definitely the applications are limitless. The different things that we'll learn about buildings that we wouldn't have traditionally found just on regular inspections the way that we do it now. I think we'll be there. But I think the technology will need to advance a little bit more to be able to include different types of spectrum in order to see what's going on with the property. But the technology is definitely heading there, and as more and more people use it, the cost traditionally goes down.
Yeah, and when we were talking about this earlier, someone had mentioned the possibility of even real estate agents using drones in order to inspect the properties. It'd be easier to do visual inspections, you know, and really just disclose items. But the one thing that you want to be very careful with, if you're a licensed person, is liability. You don't want to go out and this would be a whole nother conversation in itself, but you do not want to go out and make certain facts or assumptions about a property as if you're an inspector. That's the whole reason why you hire a licensed home inspector, roof, or termite inspector. They're licensed by the state of California. They go out there, they're insured.
And essentially it takes the liability off of you as the realtor. And especially I see the industry going more in that way for realtors to begin with, which is we're becoming more experts on the contracts and the legalities of things as opposed to keepers of what's for sale.
Yeah, and so for sure that would be one concern, that you literally don't want to go out and use a drone. You can get good shots. I mean, a lot of real estate agents right now are using great video and photography from drones.
That's actually the norm now, is to send in a drone not only for 3D renderings of the property if you want to do a property walkthrough, but also aerial views of a property. I did one with a big property I listed that had 5 acres on it.
But you also have to be careful with that because there are legalities that come into play. What if you're filming and all of a sudden you capture the next door neighbor nude by their pool? Now you've got a problem.
Well, that's what we have editing for. You could always edit those out and sell them later on.
But you still captured the video.
That's true.
You still captured it.
They wouldn't know.
So that's a big topic. And again, when everything comes down to liability, it's always best to pass on all liability to another party if you can. So instead of doing your own drone photography as a real estate agent, hire a professional photographer that's licensed, insured in order to operate the drone. In fact, for the longest time, you have to have a pilot's license to operate a drone above so many feet, like 100 feet or something.
Well, it's 500 feet is what I was told.
They extended it.
Oh, there's a friend of mine who I've actually been wanting to pick the brain of, who's an expert at all this drone stuff, and he was there from the beginning before it was all regulated by the FAA and all these different things, and the amazing things he's told me about drones has just like got me really, really super interested in it. So that's a topic for another time.
In short, it is the future. Fourth topic we have today is business tips, time management. People do come to us every now and then and ask us for business tips and what helps us, be as successful as we are. And so, Brian, what's one of the big time management tips you have?
Well, I'm going to try to use a technology tip that everybody can use because I as you probably know, and those who know me, I multitask a lot. I jump back and forth from not only sales, but managing my own portfolio of real multi-unit residential, office, and then I also develop property. So I'm all over the place, not to mention having to manage agents. And one of the biggest things that you're always going to have as an agent, especially when you're multitasking, which is almost like a prerequisite for the job, is taking notes. So a lot of the times for new agents coming on board, I try to show them the different technologies that they already have at their fingertips, such as an iPhone and an iPad. Now, these two devices, this particular iPhone and this iPad, you can synchronize them so that whatever's on the iPad is on the phone and vice versa. I see a lot of agents all the time taking notes on pieces of paper and then losing them, whereas your own device has a to-do list and a note-taking list that you could use with your own voice commands. So a lot of times when I'm taking notes, whether I'm at a planning meeting or with a client and looking at their different needs, I'll simply talk to text into my notes section the different needs and criteria of a property or a new property is about to be listed or a new opportunity to develop. And all that information is synchronized to my device here. on my iPad, so that the moment I come back to the office, I can have right at my fingertips all of these notes that I took down, and it's all synchronized, and I never lose anything because it's right on the cloud. It helps me go right to pulling up information about a property, and then being able to work on that information later on when I'm in front of a full PC, or as in my office, I've got 7 different screens that allow me to, really see the big picture.
So I have a few ways of answering this question depending on who's asking me and what the context is. But when it comes down to time management, I learned one of the most valuable things that I still use today, back when I first started in real estate. And that was, no matter how busy you are, you need to block out time. So whatever calendar you use, whether it's a paper calendar or something on a mobile device, go into your calendar and you have to block out times. So if you need to do 3 hours of working on marketing material every single week, block out 8 to 9 in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Block it out. That's the time where you're going to do marketing. If you want to return phone calls, block out 2 to 4 p.m., for example, to return phone calls. But however way you run your business, you want to block out time and stay committed to those time blocks. And that's going to help you greatly in just organization and not running crazy with just, because what happens is you start working on certain projects and then other things come in, and then you start focusing on those new projects while still trying to finish the last project, and it just gets pretty hectic. So I think if you just organize your calendar, that typically solves most people's organization problem and time management problem. Yeah. And now what I also like is nowadays with technology, I love this app called Zapier, and it's not really an app, it's a software, but with Zapier, Zapier, you can automate so many different things. So for example, for many of owner leads that contact me because they want to inquire about property management, so I have a spreadsheet, an Excel sheet that I have saved in my Google Drive. And when someone contacts me, I get their name and I get their email. I input that name and email automatically into the spreadsheet. Zapier pulls it from the spreadsheet every time I do an update and will automatically send that person an email with my company brochure, with my frequently asked questions, and also a link to Calendly in order to book an appointment with me. Once that person books an appointment with me, it goes back through Zapier. Zapier then pulls that data, sends them additional follow-up emails, and you can set it up to do so many different things. It works with over 1,500 different apps, including Slack, Google Drive, Dropbox. I mean, literally everything that most of us work with on a day-to-day basis. So that alone saves you so many minutes, so many hours of simply replying back or forwarding the same thing over and over again. So you can automate a lot of the mundane tasks through Zapier, and I love the product, and it's super cheap for $30 a month.
Yeah, I mean, just segueing off what Marc said, synchronize your devices. I always tell all my new agents, synchronize your iPhone to your iPad and your iPad to your PC. So whatever you work on your PC, you've got right on your iPad Pro as soon as you leave the office. In the past, I'd walk out with a big giant briefcase with all my forms. Now I could literally walk out with these 2 devices, and 99.9% of the documents or things that I've worked on, or projects I've worked on in front of my PC, are all right here. Again, it's going to involve various apps like Dropbox or Google Drive, different things of that nature, so that you're getting away from the paper and everything is backed up. So even if this iPad is destroyed or stolen, which happens a lot these days, I can just get a new iPad, download all my data, and it's all there. And that goes for your calendar as well, which if you're not using a calendar, that almost goes without being said. That's what you need for time management.
Okay, so let's get into our property analysis. Brian, what do we have?
So the property we're going to analyze today is a 4-unit building in San Pablo, which of all things is just came on the market. It's really the first day on the market. This particular property in San Pablo is a 4-unit building. These first slides you're seeing are just the front of the property, which is a very simple property. In fact, Marc, you manage another apartment complex close to this particular property in San Pablo. The nice thing about San Pablo, it doesn't have rent control. The 4-unit building, as you can see, has 4 enclosed garages. Here's a picture of the rear of the property. There wasn't a whole lot of information. And its configuration is 4 2-bedroom, 1-bath units, which currently get $1,600 a month for a 760 square foot unit. And then just talking with Marc, just for quick market value for a property of this size, or I'm sorry, a unit of this size, that's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 760 square foot property, it should get about $2,000 a month. So now let's jump into the analysis.
Now, I do want to say, though, if the unit was completely decked out, remodeled, everything brand spanking new throughout, you can get up to $2,300.
Right. In fact, I'm just being very conservative just because, again, this is the first time the property's been on the market. Days on the market is 1. And when I ran it through my analysis, I found a lot of really good things as to why I would suggest it's a good property. First off, let's take out the asking price. It's $799,000. That's $199,750 a unit. And if you were going to attack this from a typical 25% down investor loan, you're going to need $199,750 down. And when you account for closing costs plus a security deposit credit and then any prorated rents, you can get the out-of-pocket cost as low down as $220,116.50 out of pocket to acquire. You'd be qualifying for a loan amount of $599,250. And as you can see, as far as my point number 2 is concerned, if you were to apply the existing expenses on the property that you would normally use for underwriting. In this case, I'm using roughly 37.36% of the effective income for expenses, which would comprise taking out a vacancy factor to allow for an effective rent, a utility allowance, a property management allowance, a repair reserve allowance, capital improvement reserve. So you're setting money aside in savings for a rainy day, like $1,000 a year, so that in 10 years you'd have $10,000 for a roof per se. The new property tax is based on its current ad valorem and its current actual bonds and assessments, and then a proposed insurance bill. And all those expenses that I use in underwriting amount to about a 37.36% expense percentage of the effective income. So what that does is it leaves you with a net operating income of $45,700 a year. So again, that's its existing rents of $1,600 times 4, that's $6,400, that's $76,800 a year, minus expenses leaves you with about $45,000 a year. $45,000 a year over an asking price of $799,000 is a 5.72% return or cap rate.
And that's about in line with market right now, correct?
Right. It's actually it's in line with market, even after I beat it up with expenses. So the price is not that far off. Now, the other thing I always look at is what from its existing cap rate and its existing rents, how much can I drive the cap rate up through regular rental increases? And so if you look at the next piece there, the existing rents are $6,400. That's $1,600 times 4. And after just, again, consulting with Marc, that conservatively, you could rent these units out for $2,000, which I would concur with. I own apartments in the immediate area as well, and I'm getting about those same rents between $1,900 to $2,200, depending on the condition of the unit. So if I just use the moderate $2,000 a month times 4, that's $8,000 a month. That's about a 20% loss to lease. So with today's current housing laws, you're going to increase that rent a maximum of 10% a year, no more than 10% because of the current anti-gouging laws. And so you can achieve this 20% loss to lease within a 2-year period. Now, what that does is it increases your existing cap rate from 5.72 to 7.88. So to put that in layman terms, it takes your $45,000 a year of net operating income before you make a mortgage payment and increases it to $62,980. So again, $62,980 a year over an investment of $799,000 is a 7.88% return. Now, I'm going to jump back to that in a minute because if the market the market capitalization rate is about 6 or 6.5, and you've increased your NOI to $62,000, you've also increased your value substantially. And And again, if you take the current debt that you're trying to support, which is $599,000, that's 75% of the asking price, and you subtract out all of these expenses, you get that net operating income, which is currently $45,000, and you apply a principal and interest payment to that. You deduct that from your current NOI. What you'll find is that the principal and interest payment, which in this case is $3,144, as compared to the existing current $3,808 a month net operating income, that net operating income is 121% greater than the proposed principal and interest payment, or in this case, a 1.21 debt service coverage ratio. Lenders like to see a 1.15. Essentially, they want to make sure that if you're an investor, you're making at least a 15% profit above paying their mortgage to them after all your expenses. So these are all very good signs, because you have a property that's located in a non-rent control area, which you can increase in rents anywhere from 5, 8 to as much as 10% a year. And those simple rental increase bumps will not only increase your cash flow, which in this case is $644 a month, or $7,971 a year of cash flow, but you could increase that within a very short order, within 2 years, to as much as $2,104 a month, or $25,000 a year of cash flow. So if you look at the next slide, we've been talking about cash flow and increasing our cap rates. What all that means to you is that if you increased your existing cap rate from 5.72 to 7.88 as a result of those 5, 8, or 10% annual rental increases, because there's currently about a 20% loss to lease, or again, a difference of 20% between the market rents and what you're actually getting. As a result of being able to increase it that 20%, you would be able to increase the value of this property to $1,049,672.18. Simple math would just be taking the existing net operating income that you increased from $45,000 to $62,000, applying a market cap of 6%, and then you get, voila, the new value of $1,049,000. So that's what I like to call the value add, because you're able to take your investment and you're increasing its value or your equity. And again, this is an unrealized gain, otherwise known as a capital gain, but it's still unrealized unless you actually sell it. But it's always nice to know that your investment has not only increased in value, but it's also increased in the actual cash flow, or in this case, dividends that you're making. And again, all of that as a result of just increasing the rents and doing what you would normally do and maintaining the property and keeping everything in working order.
And I do want to add, though, when you find yourself a property manager to manage your building, it's very important that that manager understands all this and understands what the goals are, because if a manager doesn't understand this and they don't know and understand what the goals of the investment are, they're going to be all over the place, and that's how you end up with poorly managed buildings. And it's also easier for you to track and judge your own property manager. They may say, yeah, I totally get it, I totally understand it, but if they're not hitting these goals, you need to talk to them and find out why these goals are not being hit. What's wrong? It could be something out of everyone's control with the property and just bad luck, or it could be that the property manager doesn't really quite know what they're doing in order to achieve those goals.
And you get that a lot more so than not. And again, that's why after I'll sit down and do an analysis on a property, maybe make the recommendation to a client. Once you've gotten into contract, sometime during the due diligence period, as we're getting all this information and verifying it, I'll sit down with Marc and go, hey, here's the expectations of the property. I will recommend to my client Marc as a property manager, and then the various goals that we're trying to hit, and also just kind of bounce off of them. Hey, are these attainable, or are they not? Now, as a result of all these different increases, this next slide that I'm popping up here, as you can see, when you're looking at these various denominators as to whether or not a property is a good investment, you're looking at cap rate. Well, what's your good starting cap? A good starting cap is 5, 5.5, 6. So in this case, 5.72. And the next question is can I increase that cap rate? Well, as a result of increasing that cap rate from the existing 5.72, which, by the way, just to evaluate things, that existing cash flow, which we all know is low because rents are below market, it's a 3.62% return on your cash on cash, right? Now, that's not super great, but it's a lot better than your money sitting in the bank. If your $220,116 were sitting in the bank, would it be earning a 3.62 return? No. Now, you have to take into consideration principal reduction because, as you can see here, the mortgage payment of $31.44 that's proposed, $23.97 of that is comprised of interest. So you have a principal reduction, and that principal reduction annualized increases the annual cash flow from $7,971 to $16,936. So really, that's the income you're generating without doing anything, which is not what we're suggesting, because we're suggesting you improve the property, increase rents. But that $16,936 is a 7.69% ROI. And again, that taxable income is sheltered by its straight line depreciation, which in this case is $23,243. So as a result of increasing the rents, you're increasing your cash flow from $664 to $2,104 a month, or from $7,900 a year to $25,000 a year, which now your cash on cash is an 11.47% because you're earning $25,000 on your $220,000 investment. And then you still have the principal reduction because you reduce that, and you actually have a taxable income of $34,000, which is a 15.54% return on your $220,000, of which you have $23,000 of depreciation to help offset that $34,000 of income. But as a result of all these things, when you increase the net operating income as a result of these increases, you're increasing the value of your property so that over a 3-year period, if you were just going through a 10% rental increase successively, it's very easy to increase the value of the property to about $1,142,000, provided that the cap rate of 6%, which is what normal investors would want to see in a market to assume the risk of owning a piece of property, remains the same. And as you can see in this slide, you've taken your cap rate starting at 5.72, and as a result of being a good owner, increasing the rents, you've gone from 5.72 to 6.58 to 7.54 to 8.58 cap rate on your money, which also increases your ROI, your cash on cash, and ultimately the value of your property. So long story short,
is it a buy?
I think it's a buy. In fact, I sent out an email to the agent saying, hey, when are you guys hearing offers? And I'm actually going to probably talk to my other clients coming out of different exchanges about this very property.
Awesome.
And then I'm going to be recommending you to probably manage it. That's just why Perfect. I ran into your room and go, what do you think we can get for rents over here?
Yeah, exactly. So thank you everyone for watching. If you're listening on the podcast on iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio, thank you for listening. Thank you to East Brother Beer Company. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Stay tuned for next time.